G'day, it's Stephen from Woolston Web Design here again. Today I wanted to share a brief video about changing the root folder of your GitHub source control. I've got Visual Studio Code open, and you can see in here I have the files for the theme that I'm using and that I've developed for my WordPress site. But I thought what I would like to do is, instead of just capturing the theme files in my source control, I actually wanted to go a few levels higher and capture the plugins and a lot of the other things that are included in the WordPress installation. So if we jump to the folder, I'm using Flywheel by Local, which gives me this folder structure here. If I open up Local, this is the site that I'm working on. So you can see here, I've called the local site wwd-dev, and that's the folder that we are looking for. So this is the folder that I'm in. Flywheel by Local puts the WordPress installation in an app folder, and then the database goes in the SQL folder. So really all we're looking for is this here, and this will look familiar to you. This is pretty much this is the WordPress installation. What I thought I would do is, I don't really need to capture the WP config. If I did, I would probably make the root of my source control here. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make the root of my source here in WP config. And if I go to my Git, I'm using GitHub for Windows. I just find it really easy to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to change that root folder. So at the moment, that my source control root is in here, and you can tell that because we've got this .git folder here, and it's a hidden folder. I've had to make it visible by going on. Again, this is Windows, so it'll be different if you're on a Mac. I've ticked this hidden items tick box here so that I can see hidden items. So essentially what we need to do is we need to stop this being the root for our source, and we want it to come all the way back to here. But the problem that we have then is that there's potentially a whole heap of other files and folders that are included in this that we don't necessarily want in source, especially if you wanted to go all the way back to the root here. You don't need the WP admin, and you don't need the WP includes, and you don't need the majority of these other files here. If you're going to do it in the root here, you really just need your WP config. So luckily GitHub give you the ability to ignore certain files, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, let's change the root folder for our source control. So as I showed you before, you can see in my GitHub for Windows, I've got no changes. I'm on a dev branch, and there's no changes currently pending or waiting there at the moment. So let's go to our folder. We'll go into themes, and we will go into the theme that we are using. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to get rid of this file or this folder, and we're going to move it a bit higher up. But instead of just deleting or cutting and pasting, we need to do it through GitHub. And the way that we can do that is, if you go into your repository and then click remove, we don't want to remove it to the recycle bin, so it's saying that it's going to remove the repository, essentially going to take the repository off the computer. So we'll click remove, and now we don't have that repository on our local computer anymore. And if we go back to our folder, we can now safely delete this folder. And now what we're going to do is we're going to re-add that repository, but we're going to add it at a higher level up the tree. But the problem that we have is that when we add a repository locally, GitHub says that the folder needs to be empty. So what we're going to do is we're going to rename the WP config folder, a WP content folder, and we're going to create a new one which is going to be empty. And then in our GitHub we're going to say clone the repository. And which repository do we want? This is the one, and we're going to choose the folder, and we want it to go to that same place that we were before, wtdev app public, and we want to choose the WP content folder. But just double check your path and make sure that that hasn't been appended, the name of the repo hasn't been appended. So let's click clone. Now what that's going to do is, if we go back to our folder again, in our WP content folder we're going to get that theme, which is fine for now, because all we're going to do is we're going to cut this folder and we're going to put it in this folder. Then we're going to come back to here, we're going to delete this folder, and we're going to rename that. So now if we go to Git, we now have all of these files that we wanted. They've all now been added to our repo. But you can see there's a whole heap of stuff in there that we may or may not need. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some special files that are going to ignore any files that we don't want to keep. And the way that we do that is, because this is our root here, we can create a new file in here. I'm going to create a new text file. It's called a git ignore file. That's not going to work though. So what we need to do is we need to do it through the command line. And we can do that by opening up the command prompt here and type the simple command, type NUL, and then we're going to output to a new file called git ignore. If we have a look at this file, if I open that up in code, you can see it's an empty file. If we open these two side by side, it might make it a bit easier to see. Okay, so let's say, for example, we want our plugins, our themes, and the uploads. Well, first of all, we probably don't want the upgrade folder. We'll add upgrade and a star, and that's going to it's going to ignore the upgrade folder and everything within it. Say we don't want the uploads folder, and well, let's just say we don't want the plugins folder as well. I'm not going to save that just yet. I want to show you in the GitHub for Windows, we've got 2,695 files changed that are going to be committed to Git if we do a commit right now. But if I come back to this and I save this git ignore file, let's see that change. So now all of those files that we didn't want have all been excluded, and you can see we've just got the themes folder. We have the built-in WordPress themes folder, which we really don't want to keep. We'll keep going up, and that's the theme files that were previously in source, which GitHub kind of thinks that they've been deleted, but all we've really done is move them. So there you go. That's how you change the root folder for your GitHub repo. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask. Share this video with your friends, and I hope it's been useful to you. Talk to you next time.